You know those stories about an underdog facing a challenge that seems, well, completely impossible? Today, we're diving into a true masterclass in strategy and psychology. It's a story about winning against all odds. So let's just start with this question. How do you defeat an army of elephants? I mean, seriously, think about it. Hundreds of them, backed up by thousands of soldiers. That's gotta be an unbeatable force, right? Well, that's the exact problem we're gonna unpack today. All right, so let's meet our hero. But here's the thing. He's not your typical battle-hungry king. This is King Vikramaditya, a ruler who, honestly, was just tired of fighting. And this quote, man, it tells you everything you need to know about him. Can you imagine having all that power, leading a whole kingdom, but all you really want is just some peace and quiet? He valued tranquility way more than he ever valued conquest. And for 2 whole decades, he'd had exactly that. 20 years of peace. His kingdom was thriving. War was just a distant memory. But that peace was about to prove incredibly fragile. Yeah, you knew it was coming. That peaceful world he had so carefully built, it was about to shatter. A new, overwhelming force was rising, and it was threatening to just consume everything. And the threat? Well, it came from right next door, the neighboring kingdom of Pallava. All of a sudden, they turned hostile. The long peace was officially over, and a very, very real threat was now knocking on the door. And we're not talking about a small raiding party here. No, no. The Pallava army was massive. Get this, 20,000 soldiers. That's a truly terrifying force for any army to have to face head-on. But it wasn't just the soldiers. On top of that, they brought 400 war elephants. You have to understand, these were basically the tanks of the ancient world. Terrifying, and what seemed like unstoppable engines of pure destruction. So, with this kind of power, you can bet the Pallava army was feeling pretty good about themselves. They looked over at King Vikramaditya's peaceful little kingdom and figured, hey, this is going to be easy. They fully expected to just roll right over them. But King Vikramaditya, he was no fool. He looked at the situation, he looked at his own forces, and then he looked at the enemy, and he understood a simple truth. Fighting them head-on, a contest of pure strength, that would be suicide. He absolutely knew, he could never win on might alone. So, if he couldn't win with brawn, what did he have left? His brain. He came up with this truly unconventional strategy, a plan that didn't rely on weapons, but on something else entirely. Okay, so picture this. It's the day of the battle. The ground itself is trembling under the weight of 20,000 soldiers and 400 elephants. And what does the king do? He just waits. He watches this terrifying force get closer and closer, just patiently holding his ground. The tension must have been absolutely unbearable. His army was ready for sure, but their main weapon? It wasn't going to be the sword or the spear or the arrow. Nope, he was about to unleash something far more primal. And then he gave the signal. And in an instant, the air wasn't filled with a clash of steel. It was filled with this earth-shattering sound. Hundreds of drums, hidden out of sight, just began to beat in this terrifying, deafening rhythm. A sound so powerful, it literally felt like it was shaking the very ground they were all standing on. And the result? It was immediate. It was total chaos. See, the king wasn't targeting the soldiers. He was targeting their greatest strength, the very weapon they thought made them invincible, those elephants. So let's just walk through how this all went down. First, the noise. Those powerful elephants were completely terrified by this overwhelming sound. Second, the panic sets in. It totally overrode all their training, and they just turned, stampeding right back into their own lines. The chaos was instantaneous. The Pallava army was crushed, not by the enemy, but by their own comrades and their own terrified war elephants. And here's the kicker, the most incredible part of this whole story. King Vikramaditya's army won, a total devastating victory, without ever really fighting. Not a single one of his soldiers had to draw their sword. They defeated an overwhelming force, using nothing more than psychology and sound. I mean, this is the ultimate takeaway, right? It's the perfect example of how ingenuity, of how cleverness, and just understanding your opponent's weaknesses can completely triumph over sheer brute force. It wasn't about being stronger, it was all about being smarter. Which, leaves us with a final thought. This story might be ancient, but the lesson here is absolutely timeless. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What modern battles, maybe in business or in our personal lives, or even on the world stage, could be won not with a direct fight, but with just a little bit of unexpected cleverness?